Hey, friend, welcome back to She Said podcast. I'm your host, Laura Cox Kaplan, and I'm really excited to welcome you here today for a very special conversation. Today's conversation is one that I have been looking so forward to for a long time because it blends strategy and storytelling, networking, and just the right amount of straight talk. You are absolutely going to love this. My guest today is my amazing friend, Emily Lampkin. Emily is a longtime public affairs leader who spent many years of her career quietly observing something fascinating. Not just which women had impressive titles, but which women were truly thriving. And what she noticed became the foundation for her women leadership series called the Women Leaders Series. And now her new book, which is called Duct Tape and White Lies. I absolutely love the title. And we're going to talk about how the book got that title. But here's what really grabbed me about Emily's approach. First, her concept of dream slashers. Now, these are the subtle ways that we oftentimes sabotage our own forward motion, saying we're going to go after that thing once the kids are older, once work slows down, or once we feel more ready. All of the various reasons and excuses. And she reframes those delays for what they are. Not always obstacles, but sometimes they're self-protective excuses that quietly shrink our ambition. It's honest, it's uncomfortable, and it's incredibly empowering once you see it. Now, second, her take on oversharing as a credibility leak. In a culture that tells women to bring your whole self to work, Emily draws an important boundary. And we have a great conversation about this particular topic. She argues that oversharing can actually cost us power because when we explain too much, we actually hand other people permission to judge whether our priorities are valid. This insight alone is well worth the listen. We also dig into reliability as a missing leadership quality, how to define yourself before others define you, and Emily's brilliant idea of planned serendipity in networking, which if you're building influence from the inside out, like we do here on this podcast, you are going to love this. Friend, this conversation is practical, it's strategic, and it's exactly the kind of guidance that helps you stop waiting and start moving. So let's get into it. Here is my conversation with my amazing friend, Emily Lampkin, author of Duct Tape and White Lies. Enjoy. Emily, welcome to She Said, She Said.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Well, I am thrilled to have you. I am so excited that this day has finally arrived. You and I have been friends for many, many years, been friends with your husband for many, many years. And I am so excited for you in this incredible moment. I know how hard it is to write a book, and I'm so proud of you for taking the leap to do this. So for folks listening who may not know you, let's talk a little bit about your story and an amazing program that you started that kind of informed a lot of what goes into the book.
Okay, first I'm starting with Laura Cox Kaplan. Thank you for choosing to be a woman leader. What a difference you make in the world. And for those of you who don't know you personally, as I have for so many years, do it with grace and positivity consistently. And it is breathtaking to watch and a benefit to all of us.
You're so sweet. You're going to make me cry right here at the beginning.
Okay, we won't do that.
Thank you. That was very, very kind. Okay, back to you.
Yes.
Back to you.
Okay. I worked in public affairs in Washington, D.C. my whole career. But as I was doing that, I was taking notes in my phone about what made women successful. And not just the women with fancy titles and big jobs, but who was really thriving in their life. And what was it that they were doing? It became clear they excelled at three fundamentals. What I call selling you, what we generally call branding. They knew how to create a message about themselves and use it to get what they want. Second, they were experts at widening the circle. They were always meeting new people, expanding their world, and they were utilizing that networking connection to get what they want. And third, they were going now. They were not waiting for something to happen to them, and they were getting out of their own way. I used these 3 elements to create what I call the Women Leaders Series. It is a workshop format, and I went out and tested it. It took off like gangbusters. And
Amazing.
I was so tickled because, by the way, I've done many things that I thought were brilliant, and they did not take off like gangbusters. So when something actually does, it's always exciting. And I was out teaching this workshop, and people kept on asking me, "Where's the book?" And I would think, "The what?" And that's how we got to this book. Is it became clear to me that I was writing this book. I found 45 days last year, wrote the book, and here we are.
That's amazing. That's absolutely, I mean, the timetable, and I, of course, have followed you very closely. You and I have talked about this a lot. So I'm super proud of you. I know how hard it is to do that, to carve out the time, to carve out just the mental bandwidth that you need to be able to focus on something where you're really doing a deep dive on it. So I'm so incredibly proud of you. Let's talk a little bit about why you started the Women Leaders series in the first place. So clearly it was a great idea. It took off like gangbusters, as you said. But what was the motivation that sort of encouraged you to start it in the first place?
I started looking, was there something like this out there? And the answer was no. And it has a different take and approach to a lot of professional development that women are involved in. It is what I would call um, a lot of innate information that I think people assume that women have. And then it provides a step-by-step approach. I found so often there was material out there and women would say, "Terrific. I know I need to do that, but I have no idea how to do that." And we decided this was going to be I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do this because you can do this. It was also vital to me that this worked for every woman, regardless of what her professional environment looked like. So much of the material out there, especially when it comes to books, is amazing if you work in a specific office setting with a conference room. But many women are on a construction site or in a retail location or doing sales door to door. And I wanted something that worked for all of us because what we all need is fundamentally the exact same things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's dig into some of the content, which the content in the Women Leaders series that ultimately made its way in the book. Maybe let's start with I love the title, Duct Tape and White Lies. Why that title, even though I could sort of assume why that title, but talk about why that title was so compelling to you and why you felt like that was a great way to kind of encapsulate what was in the book.
Over the course of my career, I get this question, which is, how do you do it all, Emily? And my answer was always to dissuade that there was some level of perfectionism going on in my life because there isn't. And it doesn't go on in any of our lives, really. By the way, it's miserable and unattainable, so don't try for it. And I would always say a lot of duct tape and white lies. That's how my life works. And I wanted women to know we are not here for perfectionism. We're here to get you what you want in your life as it exists right now.
Absolutely. Perfectionism is just such it's the devil, and it's almost like it's really kind of hardwired in us to some degree. Maybe talk about how you advise both in the book and in the Women Leaders series, how you advise women to get beyond that tendency that we tend to have kind of naturally.
I think up front there needs to be a lot of forgiveness for ourselves and for one another. The judgment needs to stop. And in order to stop the judgment of how other women get to doing what they need to do, we have to start with ourselves. Then I'm no longer looking for perfection. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes and I'm going to duct tape and white lie myself through a lot of days, and that's okay. And especially if it buys you a bit more discretionary time to spend on something that's actually important to you, rather than the daily duties all of us have, which is work, which is our community, and which is for the vast majority of American women, a full-time job being the caretaker for somebody else. And so we needed to do that, and that was what was the whole goal.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of that advice, fake it till you make it, which, I think has gotten kind of a bad rap. But the reality is sometimes you kind of have to gloss over a few things in order to ultimately get to the finish line. Is that kind of what you mean by that, by the sort of white lies element of that?
White lies, I really mean it. And of course, I had some pushback when I was asking people for their input on this, on white lies. And I describe it in the books. I'm not talking about lies. I'm talking about white lies. And though the kind of white lies I'm talking about are how when you're having a bad day, you're in a work environment and someone asks you how you are, you say fantastic. You're not walking through the fact that the bottom's dropped out at work or at home or both. It
Right.
also, the example I always have used with my children is whenever we see a new mother, we tell her that she looks beautiful. It's a nice thing. It's not a bad thing. And we've got to get over that white lies are bad things. They're actually, I
Yeah.
think, very nice. And they also capitalize on one of the things we women are best at, which is showing empathy and reading a room.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, it's funny. We've been through this period. I mean, to some degree, I think there are folks still hanging on to this whole bring your whole self to work aspect. And now people are beginning to say, you know what? Some of yourself needs to not be at work. Like there's a place, a time and a place. Work is work and home is home. And increasingly, I'm hearing people talk much more sort of vocally about the fact that there is a time and a place to share those aspects of your life that are super personal. Maybe give some perspective on that, which I think kind of aligns with what you've been talking
We've
about.
really done, I believe, as society, a disservice to younger women by sharing that message you were just talking about. Bring your whole
Mm,
self here. And I often describe certain things that women say, should I say this at work? How do I share this? That there is information and conversations that are amazing for girlfriends, moms, and therapists, but they never
right,
belong at work. That's what
right.
moms, girlfriends, and therapists are for. They are not for bosses, colleagues, and direct reports.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about like one of the things that you talk about in the book is this sometimes a tendency to overshare, which is, I think this is sort of a perfect segue into this question. So, provide folks with some advice and guidance on what you mean by oversharing, which again, I think is sort of a related point.
I categorize oversharing under a larger category that is the dream slashers. And if your
Mm,
listeners and viewers are not familiar with the concept, that's fine because I made it up. And dream slashers are all the things we do to prevent us from moving ahead with what we want. Some of my favorites, and we'll get back to oversharing. Some of my favorites include I'm going to do this thing that's important to me when my kids are older, when my mom's not sick, once I lose 20 pounds, once I have the first $10,000 worth of investment, once I get that pay raise or promotion, then I'm going to do something. And they're frankly just excuses. And oversharing and over apologizing and many others fall in the dream slashers category as well. And when it comes to oversharing, we as women lose a little bit of power every time we overshare. It allows somebody else to decide if our priorities actually meet muster with them. And one of the ways we often talk about this and live this in our lives is, let's say I get a meeting request and it's at the same time as my son's football game. I don't need to tell them that I'm unavailable because I'm going to my son's football game. We can simply say, unavailable at that time. How about these two other options? I may even, since I believe in white lies, tell somebody I already have a meeting at that point. My meeting is, the Fighting Frogs football game, right? You don't need to know where I am. No. So those kind of oversharing, we lose power is the way I would succinctly put it.
Yeah. And there is, I might get in trouble for saying this, but there is there tends to be a gender difference between men and women on this point. And I do think when you work in male dominated environments, this is a credibility killer like nothing else. And if I think it's really good to get coaching on this point, because I've seen an awful lot of people an awful lot of women who undermine their credibility by oversharing. By the way, men do it too. It's just that they don't do it as often as I've seen women doing it. So I think it's such an interesting point. I don't think I've ever seen this. And I think I've read all of the books on these topics. I don't think I've ever seen this particular point in quite this way. And I think it's so smart. So I'm really glad you raised it. Another thing that you talk about that I really love is you refer to it as a missing leadership quality, and it's reliability. Talk about why that's so important and why it's missed.
Let me set the stage. When I began with the workshop, I would ask women to provide me with some characteristics or traits that they look for in women leaders. And within literally a few of these, it became clear, Laura, I could have written the list before I walked in the room. I get the same list again and again and again, and would never get reliability. And the one thing that sets apart a leader is you can count on them. You cannot be a leader if somebody can't count on you to do something. You can be sympathetic, you can be smart, you can be a go-getter, but if you're not there when it matters, you're completely irrelevant as a leader. And it's something that many women have perfected. And we all know this from our personal lives. There are people that we know that we count on every day, or that we could call up that we haven't spoken to in 20 years, but they're going to be there. And then we know there's people who simply will ghost us after saying yes. So that is critical to be reliable. If you say you're going to do it, you have to do it.
Yeah, I love that. How is that message received when you talk about it in these workshops? And that's one of the topics that women don't bring up. What's the reaction?
I believe many women make the assumption that, of course, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think a lot of people don't also think about it and are somewhat pensive about, am I reliable?
Love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's so incredibly smart. Okay, let's talk a little bit about personal brand, because that can be a cringe-worthy topic for an awful lot of people. Let's talk about how you tackle the topic of personal brand, both in the book and in the workshops.
Personal brand, I categorize as selling you. Your brand is all about how you present yourself and how you sell yourself. And it always immediately gets to getting what you want, because so many women are amazing and know how to actually talk about what they want or what their accomplishments are. And they'll get that far in the process, but then they don't ask for anything. They don't actually utilize it positively. As you know, in the book and in the workshop, I began by laying out this message grid, often used in advertising, marketing, and political campaigns. And the grid's real purpose is all of us always have competition for whatever it is we want, implied or real. And we have got to know what our competition is going to say about us. And it's our job to head them off. We need to create a message that heads them off before they ever define us. We get to define ourselves. I also talk about in the book the importance of understanding men and women's brains are wired differently. And if you're communicating with a man the same way you're communicating with a woman, you are losing, because we have such different approaches to how we communicate and how we're looking for information. Finally, I explain to women that you need to create what I call a selling you pitch, which is similar to an elevator pitch with some more details, the most critical being every time you present yourself, you need to end that by asking for something you want. It can be simple, but start with the asking process.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, Emily, I'd love for you to dive a bit deeper into the differences between how men and women tend to communicate and sort of how you think about that as it relates to this
Sure.
brand grid.
Women here, we'll start with how the brains are wired. And by the way, at times people have argued with me about this, and I tell them there is so much medical and scientific research out there, and they need to take it up with Harvard and Stanford, not Emily from Mizzou, because it's not my data. And one of the greatest leaders on the subject is Deborah Tannen, who's a linguist out of Georgetown. The whole point is women's brains are wired to look for consensus and commonality when we meet someone new. It's oftentimes why our conversations take longer to start, because we are looking for that thing that ties us together. Men's brains are wired that every time they enter a conversation, somebody is the one up and somebody is the one down. And we can start with the easy task of when you start a conversation with a man, assuming where you might be, and then gauging in the first few moments if that's actually where I am. Here's how it would play out differently in simple terms. With a woman, I am going to use the term we a lot. What we have in common, what gathers us together. I would almost never interrupt a woman. She is going to think that's rude. It may even hurt her feelings. With a one-up man, I am going to use the term I. I am going to take really clear accountability for my accomplishments. They are going to be clearly laid out to him, and I'm going to say, I did this, I did that. And if he goes on too long, I may even interrupt him. He does not see that as rude. I am not going to hurt his feelings. And in fact, I'm going to do it also in a way that is not rude. I'm going to say something such as, you'll appreciate this, and just cut him off. And now he's bought into it. I've shown a level of respect, and it is amazing how well it works.
That's amazing. That's such interesting insight and perspective. I absolutely love that. And I love that you have drawn from your campaign training experience. You've worked training female candidates in particular, probably men too, but women in particular. You've worked at sort of helping them train to run for office. Maybe talk a little bit about how those experiences have informed this work as well.
That is one of my passions, is electing more women. And I love that the Women Leader Series has offered me the opportunity to move beyond training simply American women running. And now I get the opportunity to train women all over the globe who are looking for leadership positions and elected office. One thing that, again, all of this, as you're saying, yes, one informs the other. I know that the best candidates define themselves very early, and they define themselves based on heading off their competition in an election. And many women, and frankly, people in general, don't think about that all the time. And it really allows them to build a much stronger message, and it makes them think ahead on where am I headed on this and where are they coming for me, and gives them, of course, in the end, a lot more confidence. And confidence is always at the core of a lot of what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about when you talk about getting ahead of maybe criticism or maybe a question that somebody would have in terms of how you're defining yourself, not so much in the political arena, but just in the personal branding arena. Give us some examples of what you're talking about and sort of, how she should be thinking about what are those, potential areas that might be criticisms, and then how to counter those.
Yes. The first step is in the message grid. There's 4 areas. It is how you would talk about yourself, how you would talk about your competition, how your competition would talk about themselves, and how your competition would talk about you. And the most important element of that is how your competition would talk about you. And jotting down just some ideas. What are they going to say? What do they think my limitations are? What do they think my weaknesses are? And you want to create a message where you're addressing them, but in a positive light. If somebody is going to say, you're new to marketing, You're going to instead talk about how you have all of this other vast experience that you are bringing new to marketing that wasn't available before. That's a very simple way to understand how that message is developed. And then we talk about the importance of taking that and building it into the form of a story. There is nothing more boring than when somebody does the reading of their resume. It's also not memorable. No one ever remembers that.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, it goes on way too long. I'm like, when are
All the
you going to
time.
stop? We talk about what
Think because it's hard. I think for a lot of people, to your point, like it is not the storytelling piece should come naturally. It does to some people. It doesn't to an awful lot of people. And I think they default into this resume reading kind of mindset, thinking that's what they're supposed to do, when in fact, a better, maybe even easier way to go about it is this idea of a story. So give us some examples. I
no,
actually
no,
cut you
no.
off. I apologize. I got excited about the topic.
And you didn't hurt
Continue,
my
please, and then
feelings.
let's get into story.
No, actually, women are very good at telling a story. And I always talk about how we need to capitalize on the things we're really good at. And then take the things that men are better at and take a few of those and put them in our pocket as well. We are good storytellers. We're also empathetic people. And all of that should be tied up into how we tell a story. So you take your resume, you're looking for something in particular that you want. What is the most compelling story that I can tell quickly and succinctly to make that point? That's how a story becomes sticky. That's how people remember you. There's only one way to do this, and it's the same way you get good at anything in life. You practice. You practice, practice, practice.
Right.
I talk about something I call a swimsuit friend, and a swimsuit friend is that friend who you would take swimsuit shopping with you because they're actually going to tell you the truth. Because we all also have those,
Love her.
what I call the "you're so pretty" friends, who always have something sweet to say, but it may not be honest or accurate based on when the last time was you washed your hair, right?
And you need both. You
Absolutely.
need both types of
Absolutely.
friends.
Absolutely. But that swimsuit friend, once you put together how you're going to have your selling you pitch and the story you're going to tell, share it with them because they're going to provide you critical feedback. And once you have it down, it's easy to adapt to different situations. It becomes dynamic. And it, again, brings a lot of confidence with it because you know exactly what you're going to say. When you meet somebody new and they say, "Tell me about you," or "We're interviewing you for this job," or "We're looking to invest in your business," you've got it down pat.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. What's your advice for going back to when we talked about oversharing a couple minutes ago? What's your advice for getting the balance right between the powerful story and the not oversharing? Like, how do you achieve that balance so that the story is tight and on point and it's hitting all these different buckets within this brand grid, but you're not sharing too
I
much?
found the easiest way to address this is to decide in my mind what information I share at different tiers of people. There's information I share in
Mm,
professional settings. There's information I'll share a little bit more if I'm at a dinner party with friends or people who play mahjong or whatever it is they're doing. And then there's information that I simply don't share with anybody or outside of my closest confidants. And having these limitations and understanding what you share really sets a good pace. And then you don't get over your heels where all of a sudden you said something. I use the example with my boys. I am happy to share with people where they go to school, what grade they're in. I'm not talking about SAT prep. Boring. Also, none of your business. Also, whoever they're dating, none of your business. And those are limitations I set. And then I'm never stuck in a weird situation where I think I said something that I wish I hadn't.
yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. Emily's the mother of 3
Thank you.
amazing men. Men, they are fantastic, which is a tribute to she and her husband as parents for sure. Okay, you're an amazing networker too, and you have a really fun way, I think, of talking about networking, which you refer to as planned serendipity. Let's dig into what you
By
mean by planned
planned, I
serendipity.
mean, actually, you have a plan. In networking, I talk about the first thing you need is to have a plan. You should not go into any networking environment without a plan about what you want and what you're going to get out of it. By serendipity, I mean, we don't actually know what the end product is going to be. And oftentimes we want something and it may end up being something different. But great things happen when you go out and do this. Great opportunities come. You meet new people, you get new information, and it informs all of the things that you're headed toward in the future because you're always gathering information. You're always widening the circle. You're always getting a new perspective. Lord knows we need that, especially in this town. Understanding or even just simply listening to somebody else's perspective makes us so much better at getting what we want.
Give me a few examples of, maybe ways that you've used this planned serendipity in the last few
Planned
weeks.
serendipity, I'll give you two examples. Number one is that I talk to with women about. If you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. You do not have to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. You don't have to spend any money. If you want to you should have a picture of yourself up there. You don't have to pay for a professional picture. If you know a 15-year-old girl, you know somebody who can take a great picture of you for free. They're amazing photographers who make women look fantastic. But you need to be up there and you have no idea what the opportunities are. And I hear endless stories of opportunities that have arisen because of LinkedIn, but they don't arise if you're not on there. In my own circumstance, I will at times go to an event where I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. I've got a plan. It may be as simple as I'm going to thank the host for inviting me so I get invited again in the future. Or I'm looking to say hi to somebody I haven't seen in a while. Sometimes you get to those events and those people aren't there. Or you run into somebody new or you meet somebody new and all of a sudden there's the serendipity. Who knew that me deciding I was going to take a detour on my day, going to one more event I didn't want to go to for 15 more minutes would have been this helpful. And it happens time and time again to me where it is almost never a loss. And if nothing else, I detail some of the events I've gone to, which were complete losers in terms of me getting anything out of them beyond raising my confidence because I put myself in situations where I was not comfortable and became more and more comfortable because I just had brain practice at it then.
There's so many things I love about that because it reminds me of, a couple of things that we talk about a lot on this podcast, which is awareness, being super aware of like what you're doing and your intention behind it. And if you can remind yourself of those two things, as Emily's just talked about, she's very intentional about going to the event, but also intentional about the fact that there isn't necessarily an outcome beyond thanking the host or connecting with one person. You don't have to be there for hours and hours and sort of wear yourself so thin because, all of this, like the work-life balance and, raising kids and working and doing all the things, it is a lot. And I think for some people listening, they're like, one more thing on my to-do list. You're not talking about that. You're talking about incorporating these really smart, simple tactics into your life, right? Making tweaks here and there, potentially.
Yes, good at and kind of have mastered already and things we need to work on. In the workshop, I use a top 10 list for networking. And so many women our age with our experience have never stopped and thought about these elements as part of their event. If I'm going to give one tip on networking, and I consider all sorts of events as being networking. Again, that mahjong is a networking event as well. Here's my one tip. Rather than sitting with the person you know the best, go sit with the person you know the least. If we all did that, how many times have we gone to a function And sitting in the corner are 2 people or 3 people who know each other very well. They're not only cheating themselves, they're cheating everybody else in the room. Can I share my other fun one
Such a
for
great
people
point.
who are women who are actually
Yes.
bringing people together, which really is the gold standard of networking and makes you what I call a connector. When you are a connector, one of my favorite secrets, or has been a secret up until the workshop and the book, is another term I made up called secret greeters. When I am hosting large events, professionally or personally, I ask a group of girlfriends who are friendly to serve as secret greeters, which means they are looking out for anybody who looks uncomfortable or alone. They are going to go directly to them, chat them up, and then they're going to provide them a introduction to a group of people there and insert them in a conversation. This is an incredible skill, an incredible gift for friends to give. It's what my mom would call a true gift. It also makes sure that every time I'm in charge of it, everybody leaves there having met somebody new and not leaving feeling awkward or I didn't belong.
Right, exactly. That sense of belonging and connection that can be created through a group. I had a conversation earlier this year with Rebecca Gardner, who is an amazing hostess and party planner, but she talks about the secret sauce for the party is really about making people feel comfortable and seen and that they belong. And what you're talking about is absolutely spot on to that. Plus, you're also talking about tackling this issue of connecting with people with great intention. You're being very intentional about saying there are going to be people at this party who may not know everybody. I've invited some new folks. You know, she's going to show up. She may be new from out of town. Like, show her a little extra love. Introduce her to these couple people who she would probably connect with, and then let her take it from there. I think it's just brilliant and so smart. Again, it's about being really intentional and really aware of your actions and the things that can make a big, big difference in terms of both, you know, your leadership, your influence, all the things. Really, really smart. You have a very bold line in the book that I really love, and it is, you need a plan for one woman, you. I absolutely love that. If you had to tell the listener to do just one thing after this
You're
conversation,
right
what would that
about
be?
that. The final portion of the Women Leaders Series workshop is about building an individualized plan of action. And back to me studying everybody and everything going on. Every large corporation, every NGO has some sort of plan around women. And it is nutso for you not to have a plan around that one woman, you. And it's pretty easy to do. Here's the easiest way to start this. By the way, an individualized plan of action is not a dissertation. It is not a resume. It is not a proposal. It's not a business plan, not that advanced, not that sophisticated. But the step that needs the most attention and should be almost instantaneous in the mind of every woman I've ever met is she knows already, if she'll admit it or not, what she wants, is to decide what that is, say it aloud to yourself, and then go take that very first step to head in that direction. I often talk that I believe women have somewhere between 2% and 20% of discretionary time every week, and it really depends on what's going on in your life. But you choose that time and say, I may only have a couple minutes, but I'm going to, for example, begin connecting with people on LinkedIn who are in the field of business that I've always wanted to be in. Once you take that step, there's some inertia headed in the right direction. And it really picks up speed over the course of time, back to confidence as well.
Yeah. I love all of this. I love this book. You've shared such thoughtful experience. These are things that you have learned through your personal experience. And I love the fact that you have tested these ideas. You have a really fresh take on so many concepts that we've talked about a million times on this podcast. And so I love that you are you're giving a fresh perspective for people, and it's going to resonate, I think, with so many women. So I urge folks to run out and buy the book as fast as you can. I will include a link in the show notes for this episode. It's called, again, Duct Tape and White Lies, an unforgettable title. Emily Lampkin, my friend, I love you. Thank you for being here today.